The Fed is cutting rates. They've already started doing it, and they're likely to keep doing it through the next several years. So the question then becomes, should you buy a deal now or should you wait 6 months? Hey everyone, it's Dave from BiggerPockets, and I know a lot of you are wondering if it's a good time to buy real estate right now, or if deals will get better as the Fed continues cutting the federal funds rate. So today I'm going to explain how you should be thinking about timing your investment. And to help this conversation, I'm just going to walk you through a mortgage calculator so you can see the math for yourself and make decisions about whether you should be buying now or waiting. So for the example, I'm going to pick a property worth 400 grand. That's roughly the national average, what a lot of investors are looking for in their buy box. And assuming that we put 25% down, which is what most investors put down, that means we're going to be taking out a loan. Our mortgage will be worth about $300,000. Most people get 30-year fixed rate mortgages. And right now, as of this morning, I saw that rates were right about 7%. Annual taxes on this property, I don't know exactly. It's going to depend a lot on your municipality, but I would venture a guess that $2,000 is about the average. And insurance, at least on a single family home of this price point, is probably going to be about $1,300. So using this 7% today's interest rate at this value, so we see that our monthly payment here is $2,271. So what happens if we wait 6 months and rates go down to, let's say, 6.5%? And I'll explain in a minute why I think they're only going to go down to about 6.5%, but let's just assume they go down to 6.5%. Now, we can't just do that calculation just changing the interest rate, because I have reviewed, I think, 25 different forecasts for home prices next year, and almost all of them say that they're going to go up 2, 3, 4, 5%, right? So let's just assume that the consensus is right. I'm going to pick 4%. That's about the average of what people are predicting. Let's say it's going to go up 4% next year. That means in the first half of next year, prices will go up 2%. So your purchase price is going to go from $400,000, like my assumption was, to $408,000, right? So that means when we're taking out a loan, we're taking out 75% of our costs. So our loan actually goes up to $306,000. It's probably not going to make a huge difference, but for accuracy's sake, let's see. It goes from 2271 to 2209. So that is a $62 difference in your mortgage payment. It's not nothing, but just want to showcase that you're talking about waiting 6 months to start your investing career or get your next deal for $60 a month. To me, that is probably not worth it, because right now, when you're in the winter, there's actually typically better deals. And the other thing to think about is the lost appreciation that you'll be missing out on. Because if that property goes from $400,000 to $408,000 in those 6 months, you're missing out on those $8,000 of appreciation, right? So you might be saving some money in your mortgage payments, right? 6 months of your mortgage payment would be $360. But you're going to be missing out on 6 months of potential appreciation, which is $8,000. So just think about this for a second. If you wait 6 months, yeah, you probably will be paying a slightly lower mortgage rate. You're saving yourself $60 a month. That's great. But if you zoom out and look at the big picture, you actually see that you're better off buying a deal right now because you're getting the appreciation for those 6 months that you would miss out on if you wait. So that's personally why I favor buying right now. And of course, this is assuming that you can find a good deal that pencils with the current interest rates. I'm not saying that you should go out and buy something that doesn't make sense. I personally only buy deals that at least have break-even cash flow. I recommend that for most people, particularly for newbies. So keep that all in mind. But all other things being equal, like if you can get the same quality deal today and you can get the same quality deal 6 months from now, you are usually better off actually starting to buy today. Now, I want to address one thing you're probably thinking, which is, why are you saying that interest rates are only going down to 6.5% by 6 months into next year? Aren't they supposed to be going down? Everyone in the media keeps saying that interest rates, mortgage rates, are going to keep falling. But they've been saying that for the last 6 months, and last time I checked, they've actually gone up. If you look back in time, mortgage rates back in August, before the Fed started cutting rates, were in the low sixes. As of right now, they're around 7%. So clearly you can see that what the Fed does when they cut rates, that doesn't necessarily mean that mortgage rates are going to follow suit. And in fact, if you look at just the last 6 months of evidence, the opposite has happened. So this is my personal philosophy about investing. I believe we are in a new era of real estate investing. I call it the upside era because I think you can buy deals today that work well, but have really good long-term upside. That is why I favor buying now, because although most people are forecasting 2, 3, or 4% appreciation, it could be higher next year, especially if rates start to come down. I also think if I can find a deal that offers solid cash flow and a solid return now, there's way bigger upside in the long run if rates eventually do come down. Because if I can buy a deal that makes sense with a 7% mortgage rate, and let's say a year from now or 2 years from now, mortgage rates drop to 6%, or maybe they drop to the long-term average around 5.5%, that's all upside for me, right? I can then refinance my property and probably gain several $100s a month of cash flow. Now, I want to be very clear. I'm not one of those people who say date the rate, marry the house. I would never, ever advocate for people to buy a deal that only makes sense on a refi. That doesn't make any sense. As we've seen over the last year, no one really knows where mortgage rates are going to go. I have some informed opinions. I've been mostly right over the last year or so, but even I don't know. I am speculating, trying to read the tea leaves. No one knows for sure. Now, could rates go up? Sure, that is certainly possible, but I think the long-term trend is much more likely to be down, which means that there is upside to buying right now. You have the opportunity to gain from that appreciation that almost every professional forecaster is calling for, and you have upside from interest rates going down over time. Now, I've said a couple of times, I don't think interest rates are going to come down that much in 6 months, but 2 years from now, that's sort of where I see more of the upside. Now, quickly, let me just explain for a minute why I don't think rates are going to go down that much over at least the next 6 months. We've seen the Fed, they're lowering rates, and that does have a positive impact on mortgage rate. It is probably going to help bring them down. But I just want to show you a chart relatively quickly. I know this looks kind of complicated. We've got 3 different data series here. What you're looking at with the green line is the federal funds rate. This is what the Fed controls. It's the only thing that they control. You can see when you compare that to mortgage rates, which is the orange line, that they kind of move together, right? When one goes up, the other one kind of goes up, but it's not a perfect correlation where they're moving in lockstep. But when you compare the mortgage rates, 30-year fixed rate mortgage rates, to 10-year bond yields, which is that blue line, you see that this is a love story. It is a match made in heaven. These two move almost identically over the last 30 years or so, actually even longer than that. And this is kind of this complicated thing, but basically what it all comes down to is this peculiar subset of the financial world known as bond investors. Bond investors are not individuals. These are mostly pension funds. They're hedge funds. I don't know a lot of people who just sit around at home investing in bonds. These are people who control massive amounts of money, billions of dollars at a time. And the reasons this is important is because bond investors generally invest to try and maintain wealth. It's not really about growing huge for them. This is a very low risk asset where a lot of wealthy people or pensions put their money to try and modestly grow their cash at least a little bit ahead of the pace of inflation. And because of that mindset, bond investors are very, very concerned about inflation, right? Because if you bought a 10-year bond, you would earn about 4.5% on your money. That's not bad, right? That's a lot better than it used to be. It's better than many savings accounts right now. But what if inflation is at 3%, right? Then your actual return, your quote unquote real return, is only 1.5%. For some bond investors, that's fine. But you can probably understand that they're pretty concerned about inflation going up, right? Because if you buy a 10-year bond, you are locked into that 4.5% yield for the next 10 years. What happens if inflation goes up to 4.5%? Then you're yielding nothing. What happens if inflation goes up to 5 or 6%? Then you're actually getting a negative return. And so this is what's going on in the bond and mortgage market right now. Bond investors are very concerned about inflation, and so they are demanding higher and higher interest rates from the government, and that pushes up mortgage rates with it. The market is basically telling us that they are afraid of inflation, and they're not so afraid of a recession. Since the Trump election, they're seeing that Trump is proposing a lot of stimulative policies. And so my read of the situation right now is that bond investors are saying, yeah, there's all this stimulus. It might be even too much stimulus that the economy overheats and leads to inflation. And that's why they are keeping bond yields so high right now. So basically, that's what's driving mortgage rates up higher right now, despite Fed activity. And when I look at the next 6 months, I just don't see that changing that much. Trump hasn't even been inaugurated yet. And my guess is that if he's going to implement tariffs, if he's going to pass a new tax bill, it's going to take a little while. It might take 3 months, it might take 6 months. And during that period of waiting to see what these huge economic policies are going to do to the economy, I think that bond investors are going to remain cautious, and that is probably going to keep mortgage rates up. So all that being said, what would I do if I were you? If I were an investor considering, should I buy now or should I wait? I think I've already told you. I think you should consider buying now. And I know that I'm a real estate investor. I am obviously biased. I am inclined to buy real estate, but I am putting my money where my mouth is. It is the beginning of January. I've already started putting out offers at the 7% interest rate, at 7.1% interest rates, because I could still find deals that work today, that have cash flow today, that have appreciation upside, that have interest rate upside over the long term. For me, I want to get in the market and start exposing myself to all the upside that this new era is going to bring. Hopefully this video has been helpful for you. If you have any questions about mortgage rates, why they're doing what they're doing, or how you should consider your investing, let me know in the comments below. For BiggerPockets, I'm Dave Meyer. Thanks for watching.